on Samach Beis Amid Beis, Rav Yosef was so sensitive and insulted by the fact that they were laughing at him for saying that the Mizbeach of Moshe Rabbeinu was an Amor. He called them Bnei Keturah. These are the rejected children of Hagar, meaning Avram is Kibi Yitzchak Yikar Chazara, and the Zerah of Avram is only through Yitzchak and not through the children of Hagar. So by calling them, Bnei Keturah, he was sort of insulting them because they had detracted from him. And even though they descended from Yitzchak, they were not considered the children of Yitzchak, nor the children of Avram. Fine. Bnei Achti de Rabbi Tarfon, Haviyasvi, Kami de Rabbi Tarfon. So these were the nephews of Rabbi Tarfon. Pasach v'Omer Rabbi Tarfon started saying, Vayosef Avram v'yikach isha shma Yochai. Now, why did he call her Yochai? Her name was not Yochai. He invented a name, and he wanted to see if maybe he could wake them up, because these nephews of his used to come Ki'ilu to hear the drasha of Rabbi Tarfon. They never said a word. They never got involved. They weren't paying attention. So let's see if now he could sort of wake them up from a slumber by, instead of calling her Keturah, call her Yochani, excuse me, which is probably female for the name Yochanan. Relay. So they woke up and they said Keturah Ksiv. The Torah says that her name was Keturah. Kori Alayhu B'nei Keturah. This gave Rabbi Tarfon the excuse to call his nephews B'nei Keturah. Amar Abaye, Amar Rav Chama, etc., Gzirin Sha'asa Moshe. So this is called Gzirei Eitzim, which were the blocks of wood that were chopped down from the trees and designated for the maroch on the mizbeach. Orchan Amma, the length was an amma, Rochan Amma, they were wide an amma. The Ovyon Kimachat Godesh Sa'ah. However, the thickness was like a level. What's a level? A level is something that you use to plane something, to flatten it out.
Yeah.
So let's say you have excess volume, it's Godesh, it's going over. So you use a plane to flatten it out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And exactly what the thickness of this level that was used for a measurement of a saw, I don't know. I think it was very, very limited. Or of Yirmiyah, the Amma Geduma. So there are different amos. There's a 5 tefach amma, there's a 6 tefach amma. And the amma that was used to measure these blocks of wood for the Atzei Marocha were the shorter amos, which had 6 tfachim each amma. Now, 1 second. The short amma is 5 tfachim. Why is the short amma 5 tfachim? Just 1 second. All right, I don't know. He quotes a Gemara Menachos. I'm not up on that Gemara. Omer Rav Yirmiyah, fine. Omer Rav Yosef, Alav Hainu Tisanya, you're saying something that's against the Brisa. The Brisa interprets a Gemara in the beginning of Vayikra. It says, Ala Eitzim, Ashela Eish, Ashela Mizbeach. Now, why does it say Ala Mizbeach? I mean, we know that it's on the Mizbeach. Shalo Yu Eitzim Yotzim in a Mizbeach. That we don't want wood to go over the sides of the Mizbeach. Now, the Mizbeach was a lot more than an Amma. So why was it necessary for the Torah to tell you that make the blocks of wood in such a way that they wouldn't protrude beyond the side of the Mizbeach? I mean, they'd have to be gigantic to protrude beyond it, right? And yet we're talking about an amma in width. If it was only an amma in width, why does the Torah have to go out of its way to tell you don't let it protrude beyond the Mizbeach? The Mizbeach was 32 ammas wide. Tanan Hassam Kevesh Hoyelidroma Shel Mizbeach. Right, so the ramp was on the droma, on the side doron. Orech Shloshim Ushtayim. Right, so it was 32 amas long. Arochav Sheshesrei, 16 amas wide. Minani Mili, where do you get that from? Omar Avhuna, Omar Kra. And again, keep in mind that this is Likuva, this is absolutely essential in the Mizbeach. V'shachat also Yerach HaMizbeach Tzofona. Now, here it says Tzofona, and we came to the conclusion that it's on the Daron. So how do we come to reconcile this? It says he should slaughter it at the side of the Mizbeach in the north. And that's called the Yerach HaMizbeach. Sheyerach bat Tzofon upanov badaron. In other words, the ramp should be on the north side, but the ramp faces the south side. I think he had a diagram for this, but I don't have it right now. Anyway, the ramp, which we call a kevesh, which led to the front of the Mizbeach, should be on the south side of the Mizbeach. The Gemara says, wait a minute. Maybe not only should the ramp be on the north side, but also its face should be towards the north. Don't tell me it faces the south. How does Rava see here that the word Yerech has to mean the opposite side, from the north facing the south? How does he know that? Omar Rava, Rami Gavra Ape. That's a kind of an insult. He says, in other words, put his face down on the ground because he's drawing a hekesh. Yeah, I don't know. So what's so bad about what he said? I got it. Yeah, because the Torah used the word al yerach hamizbeach, correct? That was the pasuk. Al yerach hamizbeach. So what's yerech? Yerech is the thigh, sort of like with the feet. And if the feet are in the north and the head, the face is turning towards the south, that's called the front. So Rami Gavra Ape is not an insult, but rather it's giving an analogy, a mushal, to a person who's lying on his face and his legs and his face are in two opposite directions. Amalei Abai says to Rava, Adarabba, Tritz vi Osiv Gavra. Why do you assume that the man is lying on his face? Maybe he's standing vertically. Amalei Ravua Ksiv. Somehow the word Ravua indicates that you're that you're lying down. I'm not sure exactly why. Let's just see if he adds anything here. The root of the word Ravua is Reva. Reva Reish Vet Ayin means lying down. Yeah, that's a pasuk at the end of Bereshis, I think. How are you using the word Ravua to teach you that it's got to be lying on down with the feet towards the north and the face towards the south? How do you know that? Maybe the word Ravua is teaching you that it has to be square. So you're going to have a diuk in the pasuk. That's what Rava says. Miksiv miruba. If it was only indicating that it had to be square, it would say miruba. And what's Ravua? Ravua means lying down. According to your logic, miksiv ravutz. Why didn't the Torah use a different word entirely, says Abai? Ravutz. Ravutz really means lying down. Ravua, it's complicated. Amalei, so Rava says to Abaye, Ravua ksiv de mashma hachi umashma hachi. You're right. The word Ravua could be interpreted in two ways. It could be when you're in a square, a shape of a square, or it can mean lying down. So the Torah used Ravua and not Ravutz because it wants to teach me two things. Number one, it wants to teach me that the Mizbeach has to be square. And number two, it wants to teach me that lying down for the Kevish. And another Tana derives the same conclusion that the Kevish has to be on the Darom from a different exegesis. Rabbi Yehuda Omer in this brisa, ume alosehu pinos kodim. I think this is Yechezkel. Let's see if I'm right. Yeah. A pasuk in Yechezkel that talks about the Mizbeach, and it says that the ma'alosehu, which is referring to the Kevish, pinos kodim. Kodim kedma means south. No, I'm sorry. Kedma means Mizrach. Mizrach kedma. Kedma Mizrach. Right. Whenever you go up and you turn on the Mizbeach, then you always turn to the east, or we would say to the right. And therefore, the Kevish has to be placed in such a way that if a Kohen goes up the Kevish, he has to turn right, and they'll be facing east. This is only possible from the south. If you're coming from the south, then if you turn to your right, you're looking east. South, east. The Ema Smola Mizrach. Maybe what the pasuk is saying is that you turn left and then you'll face the east. Lo Salka, that can't be. The Tani Rami Barchi Yechizkel Yam Sha'asa Shlomo built a yam, like a miniature body of water. Omer al Shnei Masar Bakar Shlosha Panim, right? It stood upon 12 oxen, 3 turned towards the north, 3 turned towards the west, 3 turned towards the south, and 3 turned towards the east. And for here we learn Kalpino Shatapone Lo Yehe Ela Derech Yemin La Mizrach. So you see clearly that that these 4 directions, when the Kohen goes counterclockwise, and he walks around something with his face towards it, meaning he's walking sideways in a counterclock direction, constantly moving towards his right. And from here we can derive that the way to turn while performing the avoda in the Mikdash is always to the right. And this teaches us that when the Kohen turns towards the east, right, that's what the Torah says in the Yechezkel, after he climbed up the ramp, then he must be a right turn, and that's only possible if the ramp, as we said before, is in the Darom. But wait a minute, we need that, to describe the whole creation of the Amshel Shlomo. In Cain, if it would have been just to tell you where the oxen are and so forth and so on, is then ponim lamali, right? Why does it mention ponim twice? Why the repetition? The repetition must come to teach us a whole different point. Namely, that the Kohen turn should be the right when he does the avodah. Shal Rabbi Shimon Yossi, it's Rabbi Yossi. Omer Hoyer Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Avir Yesh Ben Kevesh Limizbech. There's a gap, an airspace between the Kevesh and the Mizbech. Is this true? Omolo, Rabbi Yossi responds, why, you have any questions about this? Halok Far Nemar, it already says, V'asisa olosecha basar v'adam. Perform your ola offerings, the meat and the blood. So the Torah mentions the ola meat and the blood together and creates a hekesh between dam and basar. Ma dam bizrika, af basar bizrika. So if the basar, the limbs, are thrown from the kevesh onto the mizbeach, that means that there's a gap between the kevesh and the mizbeach. Omalo, Reb Shimon Bar Yossi responds, Shania Omer Omed B'tzad Ma'arocha V'Zorek. the requirement is to throw the basar onto the mizbeach from the kevish. That doesn't prove that there's a gap between the kevish and the mizbeach. I say that omed b'tzad marocha v'zorek. He stands on the side of the marocha, of the fire, and throws the meat from there into the fire. And if that be the case, according to Shimon ben Yossi, perhaps the Hekesh teaches simply that must well throw the meat onto the fire as opposed to putting it directly, laying it down on the fire. So all you need is to toss the meat onto the fire from the immediately adjacent area on top of the mizbeach, but there's no gap. Amalei, so Yossi wants to prove that the Hekesh is not teaching just simply that you have to throw the meat on the fire. Kishu zorek lemarocha dluka hu zorek. After all, when the Kohen is throwing the meat onto the marocha, it's doluk, it's burning. I b'marocha she'ena dluka hu zorek. If he's throwing it onto the part of the ash that's not, what's the havamina here that he doesn't throw it on top of the ash? Have yom lemarocha dluku zorek. It goes without saying that he's got to throw the meat onto the inner part of the ash, which is burning. And a hasa mishum delo efsha. He has to throw the meat. It's impossible to put it on the ash other ones. So the hekesh is really completely ibrik, if that's what it's teaching. But the hekesh must be making a different point, namely that there is a gap between the kevish and the mizbeach. But now the Gemara is going to quote Rav Papa as an alternative explanation why the hekesh cannot be just teaching me that you have to throw from the top, throw the meat onto the ash. Ki dam, the hekesh compares the basar to the dam. Ma dam avir karka mafsiko. Just like in the case of throwing the dam, there's an airspace from the ground that interposes between the Kohen and the Mizbech. Af basar avir karka mafsiko. So it's impossible to say that the meat is thrown from the top of the Mizbech, because in such a case, there's no gap reaching to the ground between the Kohen and the Mizbech. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Shnei Kvasim, Ktanim Yotzim and Akevish. There were two protrusions that came from the main kevish, Shebehem Ponim La Yisod V'Lasovev. And that's where the Kohen would turn towards the base to do the Shvich HaShirayim, or towards the ledge when he went around the Mizbeach. And he has a couple of diagrams here. There were two minor ramps adjacent to the main ramp, one on the east side of the main ramp that led to the Mizbeach's Sovev, and another on the western side that led to the Yesoda Mizbeach. Both of these minor ramps begin near the lower end of the main ramp. One leading to the ledge slopes upwards, one leading to the base slopes downwards. The ramp to the ledge was used by the Kohanim on their way to doing the various avodos that they had performed on the Soviv. For example, the dam of Achatos towards the upper half of the Mizbeach. The Kevesh towards the Yesod was used by the Kohanim for Shvich HaShirayim on the southwestern corner of the Yesod. After applying the blood of the Chatas to the Mizbeach while standing on the ledge, the Kohen would take the remaining blood, retrace his steps around the ledge, descend this minor ramp that connected the ledge to the main ramp, then cross the width of the main ramp, descend the minor ramp that led to the base, pour the blood remnants, the Shirai Adam, on the southwestern corner of the base. Actually, it would have been possible for the Kohen to descend the main ramp completely, walk around it to the southwestern corner of the base. However, there's a concern by the time he did so, there might be Krishas Adam, the blood might congeal, and then it's possible for the Zrika. So to shorten his journey somewhat, a ramp was built leading to the base. It was separated from the altar by a hair's breadth. Yishum shenemar saviv, implying that the parameter of the mizbeach should not be interrupted away on the way around. Rabbi Avo Omar Ravua. Why does the pasuk say Ravua? If the kvoshim touched the mizbeach, they would detract from the Ravua. So therefore, we require a gap between these ramps and the mizbeach. Nevertheless, the Gemara says we need two psukim. Itzuk l'michtav saviv, itzuk l'miravua. Ikos rachmanis saviv havamina di agil ma'agil. That even if you make the mizbeach in the shape of a circle, it's still ravua. Kos rachmanis ravua. I mean, it's still saviv, I should say, but the Torah says ravua, and therefore it has to be square, not circle. Ikos rachmanis ravua. If the Torah only said ravua, havamina di arch v'katim. Maybe it's rectangular. I might have said that there may be two parallel sides to the mizbeach, long, another two sides that are short. Kos rachman is saviv. Now, what does the word saviv tell me here? That saviv is a circle, and all the sides, so to speak, of a circle are the same length, so too all the sides of the mizbeach should be the same length. Therefore, it has to be an absolute square. Tanan Hasan, we learned in a Mishnah in Masechta Midos, HaKevesh v'Mizbeach Shishim Ushtay. If you add together the Mizbeach and the Kevesh, all told, it's 62 amos long. So it says Hashitim v'Arba Havim. If you add together the Kevesh and the Mizbeach, you end up with 64 amos, not 62 amos. Because both, whether it's the Kevesh or the Mizbeach, with each 32 amos. So 32 times 2 is 64. So Gemara answers, Nimtza poreach amal yisod v'amal asoved. What comes out is that the ramp, the kevesh, extended 1 amma over the yisod, and 1 amma past the soved. So the 32 amos of the mizbeach include the soved, which is 1 amma. The base, which is the yisod, is another amma. However, the kevesh reached the top of the mizbeach. So it turns out that the kevesh would overlap the 2 amos of the yisod and the soved. In fact, the base, the yisod, extended only 2 amos on the southern side of the mizbeach. It did not pass through the kevesh at all. When the Gemara says that the kevesh went over the yisod, it refers to the area that would have been occupied by the yisod had it extended that far. Omar of Yirmiyah, here on the top of Samach Gimel, Kol Kivsei Kvosim Sholosh Amos Liam. All of the different kvosim that we mentioned would extend 3 amos horizontally for each amma that they rose vertically. So it would be 1 amma going up and 3 amos going across. Chutz, with one exception, Mikiv Shol Shel Mizbeh, the actual main kevesh of the Mizbeh. Shal Yesholosh Amos Umechza V'Arba Ushlish Etzba. B'Zachrusa. Extended 3.5 amos, 1 1/3 etzbos horizontally for each amma that it rose vertically. The etz referred to here is based on the width of the joint in the middle of the thumb. This leads us to the Mishnah here on Samach Gimel, which in Mitzvah Shem is tomorrow's daf.